Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got another of our segments of interviews with executives from mining companies, junior mining companies making big news. The guys at HighGold Mining made some big news yesterday, and I got Darwin Green on the horn to talk about it. Darwin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Allan. Great to be back talking with you.
Well, the first things that stood out to me from this results was the highlighted holes, 120 meters of 18 grams of gold, 0.5% copper, 3.8% zinc, 0.93% lead, and 6 grams of silver for a 22 gram AU gold equivalent. Some other nice holes in there, 10 meters with a 52 gram gold equivalent, 19 meters of a 43.3 gram gold equivalent. Really nice looking stuff there, Darwin.
Yeah, it was a beauty. There's no doubt.
You know, the one thing that kind of stood out to me from this news release was that you talked about that this hole kind of represents the side of the deposit that you would first cut into when you come from the valley floor.
Yeah, that's right. It's we're drilling in the mountains where it's supported by helicopters and all that, but the reality is that that terrain plays to your advantage from a mining standpoint, because you can just put an adit on the side of the hill, really at valley floor, and drift in laterally. It'd actually be about a 2% incline to the bottom of the deposit over about a little over a kilometer length, which is not that far in mining terms, ramp right into the bottom of the deposit. So it'd be the first part you'd hit with that access, and it's outstanding grade over outstanding widths down there. So it's a nice reminder. This was an infill hole, but it was a nice reminder for everyone, including ourselves, just how special this deposit is.
Now, you drilled in that direction for some technical reasons, I believe. Why don't you shine some light on that for us, Darwin?
Yeah, so traditionally in this business, you'll set up and drill on a sort of a grid pattern, right? You'll have all your holes aligned parallel, and you step out, you step out, you step out, and we call those sections. You drill on these different sections. That works well in certain types of deposits. Classic single veins and things like that. In fact, it's worked well here as well. But our deposit's a little bit different in that it's a big silicified body that has veins coming at a lot of different orientations. We call that a stockwork of veins, and it has these breccia zones through it. And so it's pretty important to make sure you aren't missing something, right? Yeah, if you're drilling it, you're going to bias your sort of data to veins oriented in a certain orientation if you're only drilling in one orientation. And so we thought it was important to turn the rigs around and drill them at a 90-degree angle to our normal grid pattern and drill back across it. To see, first and foremost, does the grade that we expect to be there, does it hang together in that orientation? But largely to kind of understand if there's any different high grade vein orientations that we might have missed or been underrepresented. And it's premature with just one hole to make too big a statement. But what we have seen is this is the best hole we've drilled to date, while admittedly we are drilling into a higher grade part of the deposit, we knew it was a higher grade portion. We have exceeded what was predicted by the existing resource model. So when you do a resource model, it estimates all these blocks, and so you've got this estimated resource area, and any given point in 3D space, you're going to have an estimated value. And so this drill hole, where it passes through, in some places it reconciled very well. Both were very high grade, but we saw more high grade in areas that were modeled as lower grade. So that will have a positive impact on any future resource estimate, and it certainly opens it up here for us to do a few more holes in this orientation to make sure we didn't miss something.
So instead of a vein and you're cutting into it like this, you've got veins going in all different directions, and you might be underrepresenting if you're drilling in one direction all the time.
Yeah, exactly. There will inherently be a bias based on your data points and drill in one direction, because veins might be you might miss some or what have you. Exactly. And so this was pretty important. And because it's, just because of the nature of this type of deposit, this made sense to do. There was also a second reason we wanted to drill in this orientation, and that was the fact that the very southern edge of the deposit, if you look straight down on it in plan view, you'd see it trends in a northeast southwest orientation. And the southwest end, or the southern edge of the deposit, has got a very abrupt, it stops very abruptly. We'll drill 40 or 50 meters of true width, and we'll step a little bit further south and nothing. And that, to us, made us think that possibly there might have been a fault there that maybe had truncated the end of the deposit and then moved it over somewhere, displaced the deposit. So we were testing the theory that there might be a structure or a fault, post-mineral, deposit displacing fault, that was on that southern contact, and that's exactly what we hit. We went right through a 2 meter wide sort of fault zone with gouge and classic looking fault right into high grade ore. And we need a couple more holes to know exactly what the orientation of that fault is. We've got an idea because we use oriented core, but it's now we know there's a fault there. It doesn't guarantee that the deposit kept going and got displaced. I mean, it could just be a coincidence that there's a fault right at the end. But the odds probably are that it's displaced some ore and that opens up to the south. And to the south of the deposit has been very, very, very limited drilling in that direction. And it's quite easy to have missed it. If you think it's here and you drill down here, but it's actually moved over a little bit, you would have missed it, right? So we're going to cup in there next year and throw some holes into that area to see if we can keep chasing it to the south. And this fault, keep in mind, is different. There's another fault that is actually defines the eastern edge of the deposit. It's exactly in contact. It's a big planar fault structure. We've got this big deposit that sits up against another fault. We spent a couple of years looking for that. We know there's a portion still floating out there. We couldn't find it. We've been unsuccessful, but we know it didn't go up and get eroded away. It's down there somewhere. This is another one that's probably at right angles that's moved the structure over here. But not like we were asking for another fault to displace things, but it's important from an exploration standpoint because it actually opens up a lot more ground to explore and potential to keep expanding the system.
Could it also have any effect if it happened prior to the mineralization?
Totally, yes. Some faults are ore forming faults that can be there that help control the fluids that came up, and some faults come after the deposit was formed and then kind of slice and break your deposit up. We think these are mostly the latter, that it has displaced the mineralization. And that has significance, as I say, because if you think it stopped, but really it hasn't stopped, so just moved over here and keeps on going, well, that bodes well for finding more ounces, right?
Well,
so
especially if you found gold right on the other side, high-grade gold right on the other side of it.
You would think there has to be some, you don't know how much, there has to be some on the other side. Exactly. And presumably, we would like to think a lot more to be found. So yeah, and it was a very meaningful hole, and very, very impressive hole. I mean, we track, there's groups that track drill intersections, they convert them to gold equivalent, multiply it times the length of the drill intersections, gives you a gram meter product. And this is up there already in the top 10 of holes drilled, globally for the year, from the places we've looked at, which is in keeping with the deposit. And it's nice on the 152nd hole of the deposit to actually hit your very best hole too. So we're quite happy.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's a couple other things in the news release that stood out to me. Well, one is that when I see that copper, zinc, lead, and silver, it makes me think of a VMS system.
Well, I mean, it is a hybrid in a way. It's this kind of, it has attributes of a VMS and attributes of an epithermal. We get a lot of base metal. It's in veins, but the alteration and the mineralogy is very akin to what you'd expect to see in a VMS. But unlike a VMS stands for volcanogenic massive sulfide. We don't get true massive sulfide. We won't get bedded massive sulfide. We get sulfide veins that themselves can be massive, but we've yet to see any true bedded. Well, there's a couple spots on the property where we think we see it, but in this, it is a little different. But it's very similar to Yellowstone. We see the same copper, zinc, gold, 4 kilometers away, and we like what's happening there. And I don't know if you picked up too.
continue
sorry, go ahead.
a VMS model that this is the extension of what's coming off of a VMS?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is the actual mechanics of what creates a VMS and what creates a epithermal are not that different. You need structures carrying hot fluids up these structures and they precipitate out. In epithermal, it's usually, boiling zones and drops in pressures and things like that that cause the vein and the gold to drop out. In VMS, those fluids come right to the seafloor, very near, hit the cold ocean water, and it changes the chemistry, and you form these massive sulfide layers. But the hydrothermal circulation to them isn't that much difference. I think what we have, just one's deep underwater and one is on land. And what happens is under the ocean, you have different chemistry due to the marine waters. That's what brings in a lot of the base metals and other things that leads to the mineralogy that you see in those systems. So what we have here, and we have evidence for it, is we're in a very shallow submarine environment. We've gone from submarine to subaerial. We've gone from below water to above the water line. We know that because you have petrified wood in some parts, and you have marine fossils in other areas. So the wood came from land, and then so we're right at that transition point, I think, on the property. And there is a body of research that indicates that the very shallow VMS environment, whether it looks a little bit more epithermal or looks more VMS, are often very gold rich. And so, what we're seeing is consistent with that model.
Because I see a big zone there of high grade, combination of high grade gold and these other metals, and kind of makes me wonder, where's all this coming from?
Yeah, no, I know. And then when you scale back and you actually look at the alteration systems that are associated with the property, and you fly the length of it over 10 kilometers, these big alteration zones, there's a lot of fluids pumping through these rocks, and ultimately it's magma down deep somewhere that's driving it. That's your heat engine that's driving all of this stuff. But it's it's a cool property. Then there's a lot more to be found. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and we're happy to move in this forward. And one other point I wanted to highlight from the news release was it was overshadowed by hole 152, which was an absolute beast. But hole 148 was a nice hole too. It was 100 gram meter product. It was little better than 9 meters at 10 point something grams per ton gold equivalent. I think that was 7 grams gold within that. It was, and what we were doing there is, if you follow the resource down, from our past drilling, we just didn't have enough drill holes down deep, and we had, we had these isolated blocks or domains of inferred resource that weren't connected to the main body of the ore deposit, and so we were filling in between that gap.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There was a high probability we'd be able to link the two, and sure enough, we hit, classic Johnson tract mineralization.
It's two intersections on 148 that hit.
Yeah, there's actually 3. So in that hole, there's a few different zones in it. Then the one main one is ties to the main part of the deposit. There was some that was more footwall copper zone mineralization, and there was another little wispier zone a little higher up. Still nice, not quite as high grade, but yeah, there was a couple in there.
3 hits. Another thing I noticed is that hole 151 is pending. It looks like you're trying to walk that thing over towards that parallel zone.
Yeah, definitely heading out in that direction. Hole 123, which is our furthest, northeastmost intersection, had really nice gold in it. It's sitting way out there. And so that was about 100-meter step out from that. We're still waiting for the assays on that one to come in.
Right away I look at that map and it kind of has me speculating, do these two zones come together at depth? The parallel.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, what you're looking at in this long section is kind of the main plane of mineralization, and they likely do at some point come together. But even if they don't, it just highlights that within that plane, you're going to have other zones developed in it. All of our effort to date has been focused in this one area, a little bit on that second zone, which has nice hits, but they haven't hung together quite well enough to define a resource there yet. But it bodes well for the overall prospectivity along that trend. And I might show you the
depth.
long section here while we're talking about it, just to.
Oh, here, let me allow you to have share screen. Oops, I don't want to share my screen. I want to let you share your screen. It's right behind. There you go. Now you've got the ability to share your screen.
Okay, let's see what I can do. That's what I'm looking for. I think so. Okay, you see that okay?
No, I don't see it yet. Oh, there we go. Yeah, now I see it. Beauty.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is the big hole that we were talking about coming through here. Here's the fault that we were talking about. The holes that I was just talking about, 148 and 149, were drilled in here. And what it looks like, it's right on the edge of what was inferred resources, but this is hanging off of this drill hole here. So we kind of split the difference between these holes and drilled a section in here. So we expect this all ultimately to tie together because the angles of drilling had just basically missed the mineralized zone. We hit one out here as well. It was a little bit lower grade, but you know, some are higher, some are lower. It showed that the system was still alive and well, way down deep down here, which was encouraging. And not shown on here was that 151 that we were talking that was sitting out here getting closer to this trend. But the one thing part of the reason I brought this up was to highlight to you, which we talked about at the very beginning, was, you know, the elevation of the valley floor. It's sitting out here, and you'd be just coming in on a low angle ramp right up to the bottom of the deposit. You'd mine your way up as you mine this thing.
Well, and like you said before in an interview we did in the past, you can let gravity work as your friend.
Exactly. No, exactly. And then, you know, part of the value of putting a drift in like this too is, you know, it opens up all of this area to explore, and this potential goes off in this direction as well, right? I mean, already we know this fault is probably, this is an area we'll be drilling next season. And these misses here probably didn't test where this should extend if this fault does indeed offset the deposit. So yeah, just highlighting a few things there. I mean, you know, I don't want this interview to drag on forever on you, Allan. But
no problem. We'll wrap it up on that. But again, I think one thing that makes this really special is that thickness, 40 meters of thickness. Usually in these kind of grade deposits, you're looking at 2 to 5 meters. This makes for very good mining.
Yeah, I mean, they're just unbelievable. Your stopes are going to be huge. Your costs are going to be very low, and then you're going to just haul it right out to the valley floor here, and then it's 10 miles as the crow flies, probably 15 miles road miles to get yourself to Tidewater. There's an awful lot to like, big broad valley out here. So the mineability of this project, I mean, there's just I don't know where you're going to find another deposit of this kind of grade and width, really, to be honest. And our focus is really dual track now. It's keep growing this. We're demonstrating this is getting bigger and even better grade with this hole. We're showing up at the Ella zone, way up here, 4 kilometers north
4
of what we're drilling here.
away, and in the same kind of rock.
Exactly. You've got more there, and I know we're going to keep finding more at the Johnson Tract itself. So there's an awful lot to like about this system. So keep finding more, and in the meantime, we'll start working on the path to de-risking, whether it's sort of permitting, engineering, economic studies, all those sorts of things. Where the project's maturing. It'll be very much a dual focus as we move forward.
And you've got a bunch of results pending still, right?
Yeah, that's right. We got holes, Kona, Milkbone, and Ella zone up here. So I'm sure we'll be talking again here before too long there, Allan.
Oh, that sounds like a good plan. Was there anything you wanted to leave us on, Darwin, or let me close it up?
I'll let you close it up, man. It's always a pleasure to catch up and have a chance to provide a little more detail to folks on what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah, well, I'll close it up then, Darwin. And, there you go, folks. This resource is quite impressive on its own. A million ounces, 10 gram, close to 10 gram average grade, 40 meters of thickness, the ability to get at it from the side and come in with a tunnel and let gravity work in your favor. There's not that many of those kind of projects around. And this has the signs of something that could make a lot of money. But then I think that there's also a lot of potential in what's driving this system and the potential to keep going deeper into it. So it's got a lot of potential to it, the resource. And then you look at the greater project, like Darwin was saying, 4 kilometers away in the same kind of rock, you've got this Ellis zone that seems to be hanging together in a sort of like a layer of a cake. And they've drilled some holes in there that are showing good continuity to that high grade in it. And the discovery hole from last year was 500 and some grams over a significant thickness. So it's wide open for exploration throughout the property. They're finding things 4 kilometers away. They got a lot of pending results. And, looking at the valuation currently, let me just get this up here for everybody. So I'm just going to filibuster for a second. It's got a $59 million valuation. I would make an argument quite easily that just on the resource alone, this is undervalued, let alone the ability to maybe make it a lot bigger and better grade and the exploration around it. So I'm a big fan of what Darwin and his team are doing. I think they got a lot of good pending results to come out, and we'll do more of these interviews. On that note, have a great day. Talk to your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. Do your homework. Go to their website, look at their news releases, and look at those cross sections and long sections. It helps you visualize what they're looking at here. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.